Hi, my name is Keith. I want to give my story of hope and deliverance. I was born and raised in a middle-class family, but the only person in our family that knew the Lord was my grandmother. And at a very young age, she used to give me Bible stories and tell me about Jesus. And that's the only thing I heard about Jesus for many years. When I was a freshman in high school, we moved to the beach. I began surfing and hanging out with the local surfers, and we used to do a lot of crazy and stupid things and a lot of drinking. And when I graduated from high school, did a lot more drinking, and it got me in a lot of trouble. I ended up in city jail, county jail, and did some time at Theo Lacy. Through all this, I learned that I never wanted to go to prison or jail again. I didn't like being locked up. But then in the 60s, I got into college and married my high school sweetheart and began taking drugs like most of my friends. I was dependent though on drugs to be creative. I was an art major and I thought I had to be high to have fun. And for the next 20 years, they were a part of my life every day. And after graduating from college, I started with some friends of myself to open a restaurant and nightclub. And a fellow there that was doing some leather work for us, he owned a big leather company. His name was Dan. And he wanted me to go to work for him part-time. So I did. I was designing and prototyping leather bags, handbags, and luggage and such. And he used to supplement his income by bringing in tons of marijuana from Thailand. And over the next 10 years, his business grew, and his smuggling business was so successful that he walked away from the leather company and did that full time. He was purchasing property at different places around the world. He bought a 14-acre estate in South Laguna and 2 houses, and I remodeled them, and my wife and I moved into one house and he was in the other. And so he also bought a 200-acre ranch out of Ortega at this time. And he was bringing in like 3 and 4 tons of marijuana a week and processing it and delivering. And I was part of that process, building false compartments in trucks to deliver the marijuana around the country. And he was making millions and millions of dollars. And so I started banking for him at my house, and he was bringing in $2 or $3 million at a time. I was counting for him, and it took me 8 hours to count $1 million with the machine, and I get paid $5,000. So I was making a lot of money and sleeping with a loaded pistol under my pillow. My wife got really stressed out at this time, and some friends of hers led her to the Lord. But I didn't want to hear anything about the Lord because I was too stubborn and proud. I thought what I was doing was really great because we're making all this money. I always thought that money was the key to happiness, but I found out that it wasn't. So this went on for several years, and he moved his operation out to the ranch he bought out in Ortega, a couple 100 acres. And I had a shop out there, part of a big building, and the building next to me we were processing the marijuana. He was also bringing in large quantities of cocaine. A friend called me and said, the sheriffs had raided the ranch. I went, oh no. So I knew I had to go out there because I figured they'd be coming for me. So I drove out there, turned off Ortega, and helicopter followed me out for the 5-mile drive out to the ranch. And the sheriffs were all over the place, and they asked me if what I was doing there, and I told them I had a shop. I did some work out there. And so they ran a check to see if I had any warrants outstanding, and I didn't. So they said, well, go home. Well, the sheriffs handed the investigation to the federal agencies. And I was under a lot of stress. I knew that I'd probably be going to prison. And I didn't know how to comprehend all this. And I finally realized that I was a criminal. Up to that point, I never thought that, because everybody I knew practically was doing drugs, and I thought it was just part of life. And so 2 days before Christmas, I got a summons to go to testify at the grand jury. And so I knew I had to tell the truth, because being a child of God, the Lord wouldn't honor me if I lied and tried to weasel my way out. So I was prepared to take the consequences, whether it was going to prison or whatever, because I knew the Lord would guide and protect me. So I testified to the grand jury, and then later at the trial, and told the truth. And the truth set me free, because they told my lawyer that they were going to give me immunity to testify. And I believe that was a gift from God. And so I did. The Lord works in mysterious ways. Dan was sentenced to 30 years in prison, and I put in 30 years in the Orange County Jail Ministry, giving messages and testimonies to inmates. God has a plan for our lives. And the times that we think are our darkest hour can turn to our greatest victory if we put our faith and trust in Jesus Christ. And that's what I did.